The massive space station floated in the darkness above the planet Kepler 442b. Inside its crystal walls, beings from across the galaxy had gathered. Some walked on legs, others floated in tanks of strange liquid. Many wore masks to breathe the station's air. This was Concordia Prime, the heart of galactic diplomacy. Ambassador Sarah Chen sat quietly in the human section. Her dark suit looked plain next to the colorful robes and glowing armor of other species. She watched as the Hegemony Coalition's leader stood up. Ambassador Veltar was tall and thin, with silver skin that seemed to shine under the lights. His 4 arms moved gracefully as he spoke. Honored members of the Galactic Council, Veltar's voice carried through the chamber. Translation devices turned his words into hundreds of different languages. We gather today to address the human problem. Sarah's jaw tightened, but she stayed quiet. Around her, the other human diplomats shifted in their seats. They all knew what was coming. For too long, humans have expanded without control. Veltar continued. They spread across space like a virus. They take resources that rightfully belong to older, more civilized species. This cannot continue. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Velkari delegation clicked their approval. The Zephyrian hive mind hummed in harmony. Even the ancient ethereals, floating in their energy forms, pulsed with what seemed like agreement. Therefore, Veltar raised his primary arms. The Hegemony Coalition presents these reasonable terms to humanity. The holographic display lit up above the chamber. Sarah read the terms, her face growing harder with each line. 60% of human colonies would be given to overcrowded alien species. Earth's population would be controlled by galactic law. Human expansion would stop completely. In return, humanity would receive protected status under the hegemony. These terms are generous, Veltar said. No species has ever been offered such favorable treatment. We ask only that humans accept their proper place in the galactic order. The chamber fell silent. All eyes turned to the human delegation. Sarah looked at her fellow ambassadors. Admiral Torres, the military representative, gave her a slight nod. Dr. Kim from the Science Council simply stared ahead. Economic Advisor Martinez shook his head slowly. Ambassador Chen, the council speaker announced. Humanity has 1 solar day to provide its response. Sarah stood up. Her movement seemed to echo in the silence. She was smaller than most beings in the chamber. But something in her posture made others lean forward. We don't need a day, she said clearly. Veltar's silver features showed surprise. Surely you wish to consult with your government? No. The word hung in the air like a physical thing. Sarah could see confusion spreading across alien faces. Some species didn't even have a word for such a direct refusal. I'm sorry, Veltar said, his translator struggling with human idioms. Perhaps there was an error in translation. Did humanity just refuse to negotiate? You heard correctly. Sarah's voice carried to every corner of the chamber. Our answer is no. We will not surrender our colonies. We will not accept population controls. We will not submit to your oversight. The chamber erupted. Species that had never raised their voices in 12,000 years of diplomacy suddenly found themselves shouting. The Velkari's clicking became angry chatter. The Zephyrian hive mind broke into discordant noise. Even the peaceful ethereals flashed with agitated colors. This is impossible! Veltar's 4 arms waved frantically. No species refuses the Council's will. No civilization chooses war over peace. Sarah gathered her documents calmly. We're not choosing war, Ambassador. We're choosing freedom. Freedom? The word seemed foreign in Veltar's mouth. What is freedom compared to survival? What is independence compared to protection? Everything. Sarah turned to face the chamber. 847 species stared at her. Some with eyes, others with sensors, many with organs she couldn't even identify, but they all watched as she spoke her next words. Every species here has made the same choice. You traded your independence for security. You gave up your freedom for protection. You chose to survive at any cost. She paused, looking directly at Veltar. Humans choose differently. You'll be destroyed, Veltar warned. The hegemony fleet will turn your worlds to ash. Maybe, Sarah agreed. But we'll die as humans, not as slaves with comfortable cages. The human delegation stood as one. They moved toward the exit with quiet dignity. Behind them, the chamber descended into chaos. Species that hadn't argued in millennia suddenly found themselves in heated debate. Some demanded immediate military action. Others questioned why humans were different. A few wondered quietly if they had made the right choice centuries ago. As the humans reached the exit, Veltar called out one last time. "What message should I send to the Hegemony High Command?" Sarah stopped but didn't turn around. "Tell them that humans don't negotiate with kidnappers." The doors closed behind the human delegation with a soft whisper. In the chamber, the arguing continued for hours. No one could understand it. In 12,000 years of galactic civilization, every species had eventually seen reason. Every race had accepted the wisdom of the collective. Every world had chosen survival over stubbornness. But humans were different. They would rather fight an unwinnable war than accept comfortable slavery. They would rather die free than live safely. This wasn't bravery to the galactic mind. It was madness. High above the chamber, in the station's communication center, urgent messages flowed across space. Military commanders received orders to prepare for war. Diplomatic corps scrambled to understand human psychology. Economic advisors calculated the cost of conquest versus cooperation. But in all their planning and calculating, they missed something important. They thought of humans as just another species to be managed. They didn't understand that humans had spent their entire history fighting impossible odds. Earth's nations had threatened each other with total destruction for decades, yet somehow found ways to survive. The galaxy was about to learn that humans had turned survival into an art form. But not the kind of survival the aliens understood. Humans didn't just survive. They survived free, or they didn't survive at all. As the station's lights dimmed for the night cycle, Sarah Chen stood at her quarters window, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, human colonies were preparing for war. Ships were moving into position. Families were making hard choices. But they would face it all as humans. Free humans. And that made all the difference. The Velkari homeworld of Velkarion buzzed with activity. In their great calculating chambers, millions of economic minds worked together. Processing the human refusal, their math was perfect, their logic flawless. Yet something didn't add up. "Run the calculations again," ordered Prime Calculator Zex Hull. The numbers appeared in the air as floating symbols. No rational species chooses destruction over compromise. The humans must be bluffing. The younger calculators worked frantically. Trade routes, military strength, resource allocation, everything pointed to human defeat. The hegemony controlled 90% of galactic space. They had weapons that could crack planets. Their fleets numbered in the millions. "Perhaps," suggested subcalculator Murtok, "the humans don't understand mathematics?" Zex Hal's eyes glowed brighter. "Impossible. They've built starships. They understand physics. They must see the logic." She paused, studying the data. "They're trying to negotiate from a position of strength they don't have." Across the galaxy, the Zephyrian hive mind faced a different problem. In their crystal cities, millions of voices tried to understand individual choice. The concept hurt their shared consciousness. How can one part choose against the whole? The collective wondered aloud. Their voice echoed through bioluminescent caverns. If one finger decides to burn itself, does the hand not stop it? They had absorbed 17 species over the millennia. Each time, the process was the same. Resistance lasted only until the species understood the benefits of collective thinking. Individual will simply faded away when faced with the harmony of the hive. But humans seemed immune to this natural progression. Even worse, they celebrated their differences. Their colonies all operated differently. Their governments argued with each other. It was chaos given form. "We must study them more closely," the hive mind decided. Perhaps their individual madness can be cured. On the ancient world of ethereal prime, beings of pure energy contemplated the human problem. They had existed for millions of years, watching civilizations rise and fall. They had seen every pattern, every choice, every possible outcome. "Consult the archives," commanded the first among equals. "Find the precedent for such behavior." The ethereal archivists searched through eons of recorded history. They found species that had fought bravely before surrendering. They found civilizations that had negotiated for better terms. They even found a few that had tried guerrilla warfare. But they found no record of a species simply refusing to engage with the galactic order. No civilization had ever chosen isolation over integration. No race had ever preferred independence over protection. "Perhaps," suggested the archive keeper, "we have finally encountered something truly new." The first among equals pulsed with uncertainty, an emotion they hadn't felt in 1,000 years. Meanwhile, on Earth, a very different conversation was taking place. President Martinez stood before the United Colonies Congress, her face grim but determined. "Fellow representatives," she began, "we face a choice that will define humanity forever. The aliens offer us safety in exchange for our souls." The chamber was packed with delegates from across human space. Earth, Mars, the Belt Colonies, the Outer Rim settlements, all were represented. Unlike the alien councils, there was no unity here. Voices rose in argument immediately. "We can't fight the entire galaxy," shouted Representative Chang from New Tokyo. "It's suicide. It's already suicide," replied Admiral Rodriguez from Luna Command. "I've studied their protected species. They're not protected. They're preserved. Like insects in amber." Dr. Williams from the Science Council stood up. "I've analyzed data from the hegemony worlds. The protected populations are controlled down to the genetic level. Their children are raised in hegemony schools. Their cultures exist only in museums." "But they're alive," Chang insisted. "Are they?" President Martinez asked quietly. "When the Korthok Collective was protected, they numbered 12 billion. That was 3 centuries ago. Today, there are fewer than 2 million true Korthak left. The rest have been absorbed into hegemony culture." The chamber fell silent. Everyone had heard the stories, but hearing the numbers made it real. "The pattern is always the same," Martinez continued. "First, they relocate populations for efficiency. Then, they separate families for education. Within 2 generations, the original species exists only in historical records." Representative Singh from New Delhi raised her hand. "What about fighting? Can we actually win?" Admiral Rodriguez stood up. His uniform was simple, but his bearing spoke of decades in space. "Win? In the traditional sense? No. We're outnumbered 1,000 to 1. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours." "Then what are you suggesting?" Singh asked. "I'm suggesting we don't fight their kind of war." Rodriguez activated a holographic display. "Look at our history. When has humanity ever won by playing by the enemy's rules?" The display showed human conflicts through the ages, small nations defeating superpowers, guerrilla forces outlasting professional armies. David versus Goliath, over and over again. "We don't have their numbers," Rodriguez continued. "We don't have their technology. But we have something they don't understand. We have chaos." Minister Park from the Korean colonies frowned. "Chaos? How is that a weapon?" Because they can't predict it, Doctor," Williams answered. "I've studied their military doctrine. They expect central command structures. They plan for logical responses. They're built to fight organized enemies, but we're not organized." President Martinez smiled grimly. "Each colony makes its own decisions. Each ship captain can act independently. Each citizen can choose to resist or comply." The representatives began to understand. The aliens saw humanity's disunity as a weakness. But in war, predictability was death. If humanity's own leaders couldn't predict what each colony would do, How could the enemy? We can't stop them from taking our worlds, Rodriguez admitted. But we can make sure they never truly control them. Every human who chooses to resist is a victory. Every act of defiance is a weapon. What about the colonies that choose surrender? Chang asked. Martinez looked directly at him. Then they choose surrender. That's their right as free humans. But those who choose to fight will have our support. The vote wasn't even close. Earth would coordinate resources for resistance, but each colony would make its own choice. Some would fight, others might surrender, and a few would try to hide in the deep void between stars. It was the most human solution possible. Organized chaos. That night, messages flew across human space. Military commanders received new orders. Prepare for asymmetric warfare. Civilian leaders got evacuation protocols. Not to flee, but to preserve human culture if governments fell. Ship captains learned new signals. How to recognize friends in a galaxy full of enemies. Most importantly, children in human schools learned new lessons. Not about surrender or compromise, but about what it meant to be human. About choosing your own path, even if it led to darkness. The aliens calculated probabilities and planned for logical responses. They prepared their fleets for a conventional war against an organized enemy. They had no idea what was coming. In the void between stars, human ships moved quietly toward their destinations. Merchant vessels, exploration ships, even family transports. All carrying passengers who had made the same choice as Ambassador Chen. They would remain human, whatever the cost. The galaxy was about to learn that some things couldn't be calculated, predicted, or controlled. Some things existed beyond the reach of logical mind and organized thought. Freedom was one of those things, and humans had made freedom into a religion. The hegemony fleet dropped out of hyperspace with practiced precision. 3 massive dreadnoughts, each one larger than most space stations, appeared in the dark void around New Sarajevo. Their black hulls gleamed with weapon ports and shield generators. Admiral Thex Moore stood on the bridge of the flagship Times Dominion's Will Asterisk. His scaled hands gripped the command rail as he studied the human colony below. New Sarajevo was a standard frontier world. Mining facilities, agricultural domes, and a small starport. Nothing impressive by galactic standards. Initial scan complete, reported his weapons officer. The colony has basic defense platforms. Class 2 plasma cannons. Particle shields from the last century. No significant military presence. Thexmore's throat sacs inflated with amusement. Of course not. This isn't meant to be a real battle. The High Command wants a demonstration. Show the humans what resistance costs. He activated the communication system. Attention, New Sarajevo. This is Admiral Thex Moore of the Hegemony Third Fleet. By order of the Galactic Council, this colony is now under hegemony protection. Prepare for occupation forces. The reply came immediately. A single human voice, calm and clear. Admiral Thex Moore. This is Governor Maria Santos of New Sarajevo. We do not accept hegemony protection. You have entered sovereign human space without permission. Thex Moore's amusement grew. Governor Santos, you have surely seen our ships. 3 dreadnoughts against your mining world. Be reasonable. We are being reasonable. You have 10 minutes to withdraw or be fired upon. The bridge fell silent. Thexmore's officers looked at each other in confusion. The weapons officer checked his displays twice. Admiral, he said slowly, they're threatening us. A mining colony with 6 defense platforms is threatening 3 dreadnoughts. Thexmore studied the tactical display. The human defenses were pitiful. Their plasma cannons couldn't penetrate modern shielding. Their missiles were too slow. It would take their entire arsenal just to scratch the paint on one dreadnought. Perhaps they don't understand, suggested the communications officer. Should we transmit our full specifications? No. Thexmore decided. Let them see for themselves. Target their primary defense platform. Minimum power. I want them functional enough to surrender properly. The Times Dominion's Will Times charged its main cannon. A beam of coherent energy lanced out, striking the nearest defense platform. The human structure exploded in a brief fireball. "That should clarify things," Thexmore said confidently. Governor Santos's voice returned, unchanged. 9 minutes, Admiral. Thexmore frowned. He'd just demonstrated overwhelming superiority. The logical response was immediate surrender. Every species in galactic history had made that calculation. "Governor, you've seen our power. Your defenses cannot protect you. Surrender now, and your people will be treated well." 8 minutes, Admiral. Something cold settled in Thexmore's stomach. He'd fought stubborn enemies before, but this felt different. The human voice showed no fear, no anger, no desperation. Just certainty. "Scan the colony again," he ordered. "Sir?" "Full sensor sweep. Look for hidden weapons, underground bunkers, anything we missed." The scan revealed nothing new. New Sarajevo was exactly what it appeared to be. A simple mining colony with basic defenses. But as the sensor operator studied the readings more closely, something caught his attention. "Admiral, there's something odd about the fusion reactors." Thexmore looked at the display. "What kind of odd?" "They're running at 97% capacity. For a civilian colony, that's unusual. Most settlements run reactors at 60% for safety." "Maybe they're powering shields?" "No, sir. The power isn't going to defensive systems. It's just building up." 5 minutes remained. Thexmore contacted the colony again. "Governor Santos, our scans show unusual energy readings. What are you doing down there?" "Preparing." "Preparing for what?" "To show you something important, Admiral. Something about humans that your databases might not include." 3 minutes. The sensor operator's voice rose. "Admiral, the fusion reactors are redlining. They're pushing past safe limits." Thexmore studied the readings with growing alarm. "What happens if those reactors overload?" And the science officer ran quick calculations. Given the number of reactors and their output, the explosion would be equivalent to a small star going nova. It would vaporize everything within 50,000 kilometers. 2 minutes. "They're bluffing," Thexmore said, but his voice lacked confidence. "They wouldn't destroy their own colony." "It's madness, Admiral," the communications officer reported. "I'm detecting massive data bursts from the colony. They're transmitting everything. Colony records, personal files, technical specifications, all of it being sent to other human worlds." 1 minute. "Governor Santos," Thexmore called urgently, "stop this madness. Think of your people. Think of your families." "I am thinking of them, Admiral. I'm thinking of all humans. We're sending you a message that the galaxy needs to understand." 30 seconds. "What message?" Thexmore demanded. "That some things are worth more than life. That freedom isn't negotiable. That humans choose how we live and how we die." 10 seconds. Thexmore made a desperate decision. "All ships, emergency retreat, maximum burn." But it was too late. New Sarajevo's 6 fusion reactors overloaded simultaneously. For a brief moment, a new star blazed in the darkness. The explosion tore through space, vaporizing the colony completely. The Times Dominion's will times caught the edge of the blast wave, its shields failing as the ship spun wildly. The second dreadnought lost its entire port side. Only the third ship, furthest from the blast, escaped with minor damage. In the aftermath, as emergency crews fought fires and sealed hull breaches, Thexmore stood in his damaged bridge and tried to understand what had happened. The humans had destroyed themselves rather than surrender. They'd chosen death over protection. "Admiral," his communications officer reported weakly, "we're receiving a transmission." "From where?" "The colony is gone. From the emergency beacon they left behind. It activated after the explosion." The message was brief. Governor Santos's voice, recorded before the reactors overloaded. "To any hegemony forces receiving this transmission, New Sarajevo died free. Every human colony you attack will face the same choice. Some may surrender, others will resist. but none will accept slavery willingly. You can conquer our worlds, but you cannot conquer our will. Remember that. When you count the cost, Texmore slumped in his command chair. In a single moment, everything had changed. He'd come to New Sarajevo expecting easy submission. Instead, he'd witnessed something that violated every principle of galactic civilization. Rational beings didn't choose death over life. Intelligent species didn't destroy their own infrastructure. Civilized peoples didn't prefer annihilation to assimilation. But humans weren't rational in the way the galaxy understood reason. They operated on principles that didn't appear in any database. They valued abstractions, freedom, dignity, choice, more than survival itself. Set course for hegemony space, Texmore ordered quietly. What should I tell High Command? Asked his communications officer. Texmore stared at the expanding cloud of debris that had been New Sarajevo. Somewhere in that glowing plasma were the atoms of 10,000 humans who had chosen death over surrender. Tell them that humans are insane, he said finally. Tell them that everything we know about warfare may be wrong. Tell them that conquering Earth won't be like conquering any other world. As the damaged hegemony ships limped toward home, emergency signals spread across human space. New Sarajevo had sent its final message not just to the aliens, but to every human colony in the galaxy. The message was simple. They had shown that humans couldn't be broken, only destroyed. And sometimes, even destruction was a victory. In response, human colonies began making their own preparations. Some built hidden bunkers and underground cities. Others rigged their infrastructure for quick demolition. A few loaded their entire populations onto ships and vanished into deep space. Each colony chose its own path, its own form of resistance. Some would fight conventionally. Others would use guerrilla tactics. Many would employ strategies the aliens had never seen, but all had learned the lesson of New Sarajevo. Better to die human than live as slaves. The galaxy had been warned. Fleet Admiral Kex then studied the holographic display with growing frustration. 3 months into the human campaign, and nothing made sense. Red dots marked conquered worlds, but the victories felt hollow. Report on Kepler 438c, he ordered. Commander Velnix consulted his tablet. Captured 6 weeks ago, sir. Population of 40,000. We control the spaceport, the government building, and all major infrastructure. Good. And resistance? Continuing, sir. The underground networks remain active. Our patrols are attacked daily. Power grid sabotage is constant. We've lost 12% of our occupation force. Kexthan's tentacles writhed in annoyance. How many human leaders have we captured? 17, sir. But new ones keep appearing. They seem to generate leaders spontaneously. That was the problem. Every conquered species had a hierarchy. Capture the leaders, control the species. But humans didn't work that way. Cut off one head, and 3 more appeared. Sometimes children barely old enough to walk were organizing resistance cells. What about Wolf 359b? Kex then asked. More complicated, sir. The colony evacuated before we arrived, left behind an automated defense network. We spent 2 weeks disabling it, only to discover the entire settlement was rigged with explosives. The humans detonated everything as we landed. Casualties? Minimal to our forces. But we gained nothing. The planet is useless now. Kex then moved to another display. Proxima Centauri 3? That's unusual, sir. The humans surrendered immediately. Welcomed us as liberators. Their leader, Governor Kim, has been completely cooperative. Finally, some good news. Excellent. Are they providing useful intelligence? No, sir. They claim to know nothing about other human activities. Governor Kim says each colony operates independently. He insists he's never even spoken to leaders on other worlds. Kexthan's mood soured again. Even cooperative humans were useless. They had no central intelligence to extract. No master plans to uncover. No strategic secrets to reveal. Sir, Communications Officer Zartek announced, we have new reports from across the front. The reports painted a picture of chaos. On Glisa 667C, human children had hacked the occupation authority's computers and crashed their entire administrative system. On Tau CD2, farmers had poisoned their own crops rather than feed hegemony forces. On Ross 128B, the human population had simply vanished overnight, leaving behind empty cities and no clues. But the most disturbing reports came from hegemony space itself. Sir, Zartek continued, we're receiving casualty reports from 17 core worlds. Freighter explosions, infrastructure failures, communication blackouts. Intelligence believes it's human sabotage. Impossible. How could humans penetrate our security? They're not penetrating it, sir. They're already inside it. Kex then stared at his officer. Explain. Human merchant vessels, sir. For decades, humans have carried cargo throughout the galaxy. Their ships are in every port. Their traders visit every world. We never saw them as a threat. The realization hit Kex then like a physical blow. While the hegemony focused on human military ships, civilian vessels had been moving freely through galactic space. Cargo haulers, passenger liners, research ships, all carrying humans to every corner of the galaxy. How many human civilians are in hegemony space? Zartek's hands shook as he consulted his records. Unknown, sir. Humans don't register with central authority. They move freely under various trade agreements. Estimates range from 50,000 to 500,000. And now they're all potential saboteurs. It appears so, sir. Intelligence reports show no coordination between attacks. Each incident seems individually planned and executed. We're not fighting an organization. We're fighting individual humans making personal choices. Admiral Kex then sank into his command chair. In 3 months, the hegemony had captured 17 human worlds and gained nothing. They controlled human infrastructure, but not human people. They held human territory but faced constant resistance. Worse, the resistance was spreading beyond humanity. On Zephyrian worlds, individuals were breaking away from the hive mind. Velkari economic units were questioning efficiency protocols. Even some ethereals were experimenting with concepts like personal choice. Sir, reported Intelligence Chief Mordan, we have intercepts from human communications. They might explain the coordination problem. Show me. The hologram displayed fragments of human messages, captured from various sources. Maria here. Albany Station hit 3 hegemony supply ships last week. Thought you should know. No orders needed. Just do what feels right. Give my love to the kids. This is Captain Chen of the merchant vessel times Lucky Strike *. We're in hegemony space near Rigel. Spotted a weakness in their patrol pattern. Going to hit their fuel depot tomorrow. If anyone wants to help, we'll be on emergency channel 7. New Berlin calling all stations. Our resistance cell captured a hegemony intelligence officer. He's singing like a bird, uploading everything to the mesh network. Do what you want with the information. Kex then read the messages with growing horror. No military codes, no chain of command, no strategic planning. Just individual humans sharing information and making independent decisions. This is impossible, he muttered. How do they coordinate without coordination? Mordan highlighted patterns in the data. They don't coordinate, sir. They communicate. Each human group acts independently, but they share information freely. The result looks like coordination, but it's really chaos. And chaos is impossible to predict, Kex then realized. Or counter, sir. How do you defeat an enemy with no center? How do you negotiate with a species that has no single leader? How do you break the will of people who've already decided they'd rather die than surrender? Reports continued flowing in. Human resistance was evolving, adapting, growing stronger. On some worlds, they fought conventional wars. On others, they used guerrilla tactics. Many simply made themselves ungovernable. The most disturbing development was on the world of Haven 7. The human colony there had apparently decided to prove a point. They'd allowed hegemony forces to capture the world without resistance. Then, they'd simply ignored the occupation. The humans there just don't acknowledge us, reported the local commander. They continue their daily lives as if we don't exist. They pay no attention to our orders. They walk past our soldiers like they're not there. When we arrest some, others take over their functions immediately. Are they organized? No, sir. They have no apparent leader, no obvious structure. But somehow they maintain their society despite our occupation. It's like they've created a parallel civilization that exists independently of our control. Admiral Kex then realized that the hegemony faced a completely new type of warfare. They'd prepared to fight human governments, human armies, human leaders. Instead, they faced human nature itself. Every individual human could choose to resist. Every choice created unpredictable consequences. Every action inspired others to make their own choices. The result was a cascade effect that no military doctrine could address. "Sir," Zartek announced, "priority message from Hegemony High Command." The message was brief. "Admiral Kex, then you are ordered to appear before the Supreme Council immediately to explain the human situation. Your replacement will assume command of the campaign." As Kex then prepared to leave, he looked one last time at the tactical display. Red dots marked human worlds under hegemony control. But the red was deceptive. The hegemony held territory, not people. They occupied space, not minds. Humans had taught the galaxy something new. That power over objects wasn't the same as power over people. That controlling infrastructure wasn't the same as controlling will. That conquest meant nothing if the conquered refused to stay conquered. Most disturbing of all, other species were starting to learn this lesson. Resistance movements were appearing on non-human worlds. The concept of individual choice was spreading like a virus through galactic civilization. "Sir," asked his aide, "any final orders for the human campaign?" Kex then considered the question. How do you give orders for a war that had no precedent? How do you plan strategy against an enemy that had no strategy? "Tell my replacement to read human history," he said finally. "All of it. Maybe somewhere in their past, he'll find the secret to defeating them." As his ship departed for hegemony space, Admiral Kex then wondered if such a secret even existed. Humans had been fighting impossible odds for their entire existence. They'd made an art form of surviving things that should have destroyed them. Now they'd brought that art to the stars. Behind him, the war continued. Individual humans making individual choices. Each choice creating ripples that spread across the galaxy. Each ripple inspiring others to choose for themselves. The hegemony had started a war to control humanity. Instead, humanity was teaching the galaxy how to be free. The first crack appeared on Valkyrian, homeworld of the hegemony's most loyal economic partners. Subcalculator Mertok stood before the Prime Computing Council with a request that had never been made in Valkyrie history. "I wish to stop calculating," he announced. The silence in the chamber was absolute. For 3,000 years, Valkyrie had done nothing but calculate. Math was their religion. Efficiency their god. Optimization their highest calling. "Explain this malfunction," demanded Prime Calculator Zexhall. "It's not a malfunction," Mertok replied. "I've been studying human behavior patterns. They make choices that aren't mathematically optimal. Yet somehow, they succeed. I want to understand how choice works without calculation." "Impossible. Choice without calculation is chaos." "Perhaps," Mertok agreed. He walked out of the chamber, leaving behind centuries of conditioning. Within hours, other Valkyrie began making their own requests. By the end of the week, efficiency on Valkyrion had dropped by 12%. By the end of the month, young Valkyrie were experimenting with concepts like art and play. The infection was spreading. On the Zephyrian collective worlds, something unprecedented was happening. Individual voices were breaking away from the hive mind. The process was traumatic, like pieces of a single organism deciding to become separate creatures. But it was happening. "We feel alone," reported the first successful individual. A young Zephyrian who had chosen the name, one who stands apart, but also free. "We think thoughts that no one else thinks. We make choices that no one else makes. The hive mind recoiled in horror. Return to the collective. This isolation will destroy you. Perhaps, one who stands apart replied, unconsciously echoing human philosophy. But it will be our destruction. Chosen by us alone. More Zephyrians began the painful process of separation. Not many. The collective would survive. But enough to prove that even the most unified consciousness could fragment when exposed to the idea of individual choice. The ethereals, ancient and supposedly wise, gathered in emergency conclave. They had never faced anything like this in millions of years of existence. The contamination spreads, reported the archive keeper. 17 species show signs of individual rebellion. Economic efficiency is declining. Military units question orders. Some beings are choosing personal desires over collective good. What do the humans want? Asked the first among equals. That's just it. They don't seem to want anything from us. They're not trying to convert other species. They're not spreading propaganda. They're simply being human. And somehow, that's enough. The first among equals pulsed with confused light. How does one fight an idea that isn't being actively promoted? How does one stop a concept that proves itself simply by existing? The answer came from an unexpected source. On the rim world of Korax 7, a mixed population of different species had been observing human refugees. Dr. Zinth Ara, a Regelian xenopsychologist, published a report that sent shockwaves through galactic academia. Humans don't convert others to their way of thinking, she wrote. They simply demonstrate that alternatives exist. Once beings realize they have choices, they begin making them. The humans have introduced a virus of consciousness. The awareness that life can be lived differently. Her report included disturbing examples. Former slave species were questioning their status. Protected worlds were asking why they needed protection. Even hegemony citizens were beginning to wonder if their perfect society was really so perfect. Supreme Chancellor Veltar received the reports with growing alarm. The human war had been a military problem. This was something far worse. A threat to the very foundation of galactic civilization. Economic productivity is down 18% across our core worlds, reported his economic advisor. Military recruitment has dropped by 26%. Citizens are asking questions we've never had to answer. What kind of questions? Why do we need a Supreme Chancellor? Why can't individual worlds govern themselves? Why should the hegemony control other species? Why is unity always better than diversity? Veltar felt a chill run through his scaled spine. These were human questions, spread not by human agents but by the simple example of human resistance. What about the military campaign? Admiral Kexthan's replacement reports the same problems. We can capture human worlds, but we can't control human people. The cost of occupation is becoming prohibitive. Worse, our own forces are becoming infected with human ideas. Explain. Soldiers are questioning orders. Some units have refused to attack civilian targets. A few have actually deserted to join human resistance groups. The concept of individual choice is undermining military discipline. Veltar stared at the tactical displays showing the war's progress. The hegemony was winning every battle and losing the war. Each victory created more problems. Each conquest spread the human infection further. Sir, his communications officer announced, we have urgent reports from the Galactic Trade Network. The economic situation was even worse. Human merchant vessels had been the backbone of interstellar commerce for decades. Now they were gone. Fled to neutral space or actively sabotaging trade routes. The galactic economy was grinding to a halt. Independent traders are demanding the same freedoms humans claim, the economic advisor reported. They want to choose their own routes, set their own prices, govern their own affairs. The trade authority is losing control. What do they want? They want to be treated like humans, as equals, not subjects. The word hung in the air like a toxin. Equals. The concept that had never existed in galactic politics. The hegemony ruled, others obeyed. The strong commanded, the weak complied. That was the natural order. But humans had introduced an unnatural order. They claimed that all intelligent beings deserved freedom, choice, dignity. They lived as if these abstractions were real, valuable things worth dying for, and other species were beginning to believe them. "Sir," the communications officer announced, "priority transmission from the Outer Rim. Several species are declaring independence from hegemony protection." The communications officer, independence from hegemony protection. Veltar read the reports with growing disbelief. The Altarians had politely asked the hegemony to leave. The Rigelians had simply stopped acknowledging hegemony authority. Most shocking of all, the Andromedans were demanding representation in galactic government. "This is chaos," Veltar muttered. "No, sir," corrected his advisor. "This is freedom. And according to our intelligence reports, it's spreading faster than we can contain it." The Supreme Chancellor realized that the hegemony faced an impossible choice. They could destroy humanity completely, turning every human world into glass. But the idea of freedom would survive, carried by other species who had seen its power. Or they could try to coexist with a force that challenged everything they believed about power, control, and civilization. "Prepare a message to the human leadership," Veltar ordered finally. "Sir, humans have no central leadership." "Then send it to all of them. Every colony, every ship, every individual. Tell them the hegemony wishes to negotiate. What terms should we offer?" Veltar considered the question. For 12,000 years, the hegemony had dictated terms to conquered species. Now, for the first time, they would have to negotiate as equals. Ask them what they want. The message went out across human space, transmitted on every frequency, in every language. The response was swift and universal. Humans wanted to be left alone, to live as humans. Nothing more, nothing less. But the damage was done. The idea had escaped containment. Across the galaxy, beings were making choices their ancestors had never imagined. The age of unquestioned authority was ending. 3 months later, Ambassador Sarah Chen returned to Concordia Prime. But this time, she came not as a supplicant but as an equal. The Galactic Council had been forced to restructure itself, accepting representatives from independence movements across the galaxy. The chamber was different now. Instead of unified delegations following orders, individual voices rose in debate. Some species had fractured into multiple factions. Others had merged with former enemies. The orderly hierarchy of galactic civilization had become something messier, more chaotic, more human. "The chair recognizes the representative from Earth," announced the new council speaker. Sarah Chen stood up, looking at the transformed assembly. "Thank you, Speaker. I have a simple message from humanity. Welcome to freedom." The chamber erupted in discussion. Some voices praised the new order. Others mourned the old. Many expressed confusion about what came next. Sarah smiled. That confusion, that uncertainty, that glorious chaos of choice, that was the most human thing of all. "We don't know what the galaxy will look like tomorrow," she continued. "We don't know which choices will succeed and which will fail. But we know this. For the first time in 12,000 years, beings across this galaxy will make their own choices, live their own lives, and face their own consequences." "And if chaos results?" asked Veltar. "Now just one voice among many. Then it will be our chaos," Sarah replied. "Our beautiful, messy, human chaos. And somehow, we'll make it work." Outside the station, the galaxy continued its transformation. Humans and aliens learned from each other, argued with each other, chose their own paths through the stars. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't efficient. It wasn't orderly, but it was free. And in the end, that made all the difference.